Hi, I'm Tull from the Irish Politics newsletter, and as always, I'm here with Vince from Wall Street and Maine, and we're going to be talking about a mercurial figure tonight in global politics, global finance, global tech. Tonight we're talking about Elon Musk, the South African-born, self-appointed overlord of electric cars, discount space travel, and, whatever Twitter's calling itself this week. He first cashed in by helping to invent new and exciting ways to separate you from your money online. And then he spent the profits from that in building reusable rockets for NASA, battery-powered cars famously known as Tesla. He's currently building another gadget to plug into your brain.
Neuralink.
Neuralink, to plug a computer into your brain, essentially, to help people that are disabled and somewhat. To some, he's a visionary trying to drag humanity towards the stars. To others, he's a billionaire agent of chaos whose late-night posts can tank stocks, start fights, and rewrite the news cycle before breakfast. Is that a fair summary, Vince?
That is a fair summary. And you said, to some people and to others, I think the easy answer there is he's both, right?
Yeah. He give us, he take it. He's, part genius, part madman, part ketamine addicted. Tech billionaire, depending on who you talk to and whose biography of him that you believe.
He contains multitudes, as the old saying goes. And I think in many cases, what people believe about Musk, I think reflects more about them than about him.
People are projecting their own insecurities onto him, do you think?
Their own insecurities, their own beliefs, their own priorities. It's very easy for his supporters to kind of write off some of the drawbacks that he has, and he's made some huge errors, which I'm sure we'll get to, and we've discussed in the past. And I think it's also just as easy for his critics, some of whom are just intrinsically opposed to the wealth and power that he has, to focus only on the negatives and ignore the fact that he has been just absolutely spectacular in creating these companies. We've said that before, and we'll talk again about that in this episode.
Companies he didn't invent, companies he took over for the most part.
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, that's true of Tesla. He's called the founder of Tesla. He's not the founder of Tesla, but I think in the case of SpaceX, certainly, that was his baby, still is his baby. And as we'll get to, I think what he's done, ironically, given that we're going to talk about the controversies about Grok, which is the artificial intelligence model developed by his company, XAI. I think XAI is actually the most impressive thing he's ever done from a business sense. But as I said, we'll get to that down the line. What we're going to do here is start with the current controversy that's kind of brought him once again into the news cycle and pretty much instigated this episode. We wanted to talk about him in our news roundup on Thursday and very quickly realized that there was no way to talk about him for like 8 minutes. So
no, there's no way you can do that.
But the current controversy is that Grok, XAI's model, allowed users to take photographs and essentially undress people and turn them in, put them in bikinis or things like that. And not unsurprisingly, given the way the internet is used, this capability was targeted mostly to women and unfortunately in some cases minors.
It's become a massive thing in Europe, Vince.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Do you get a sense of that on the other side of the pond? But the fact of the matter is, in Ireland at the moment, XAI or Grok is being investigated for over 200 child sexual abuse images. I had reports of them. Okay. Ireland's investigating it. England is investigating it. Europe is investigating it. They're talking about slapping him with a massive fine. We're talking, he got €120 million fine off the EU a couple of months ago.
So let's point out it's not just Europe either. Because of this, Grok has already been banned in Indonesia and Malaysia.
It has been banned,
so
yes.
This is a worldwide scandal.
It is a worldwide scandal. I will say this, though. Grok brought everything to the forefront when it came to social media and how images are altered, because apps like these have been around for a long time.
Right.
They're not unique to X. For example, I wrote recently that, every year Facebook, Meta, whatever it's screaming at itself these days, and it takes down approximately 300,000 Facebook accounts that get linked to child sexual abuse images and inappropriate images of minors or grooming.
Right.
This has been going on year with Facebook for the last 10 years, They've taken down millions of accounts linked to child sexual abuse images. TikTok is similar, very similar also. And I think it's just Grok had brought it to people's consciousness. But very famous people all of a sudden found themselves undressed. And these famous people are powerful people. They would have phoned their politicians. They took to the airwaves all over Ireland and Europe, celebrities in each their own individual countries, France, Germany, Italy, Ireland, England. I saw numerous politicians undressed, usually left-wing politicians.
I'm really sorry for you.
I know, I had to bleach my eyes afterwards.
Nobody should be subject to that.
And so here's my thing. The algorithm is pushing it so the XAI algorithm was pushing this stuff and it was blasted all over people's social media. If you open X these days, it doesn't bring you to the people you're following anymore. It brings you to whatever's hot. And there's a lot of porn there and a lot of illegal porn and a lot of, I don't know how you would describe it, but they're doing it without women's permission. So there's probably a word for that. It's not a healthy space to be for women at the moment.
No, certainly. And that does violate various laws in the EU and in America, for sure. When we did our highlights and lowlights episode, I called Musk straight up a liar. And someone close to me reached out and they're like, that's probably not something you should say in public. And I was like, that's the point. Like, I'm happy to say that because we have evidence. And I'm kind of establishing my anti-Musk bona fides up front here because I think he and XAI and their supporters have a point here that they are getting kind of singled out here, that they have become the poster child for the dark corners of the internet. And I'm sure that his political turn over the last couple of years, and particularly over the last couple months and even weeks, is part of that. He's an easier punching bag for Keir Starmer than is Mark Zuckerberg or whoever. He's just a better lightning rod.
Yeah, this stuff has been going on for the last 2 or 3 years. AI apps have been undressing women all over the place.
Yeah.
And Musk in his stupidity has given the EU with something to beat him over the head with. And do you know why they want to beat him over the head with, Vince? Do you know why they want to beat him over the head? Because they see him as an enemy of liberal Western democracy.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Absolutely.
And he gave the EU an excuse to bring in the Digital Service Act to slap him over the head with it. The nuclear option is to ban X completely.
Right.
Take him off the app stores in Europe, and Google would have to comply with that, of course. They probably won't, but he's going to be hit with a big fine, a massive fine.
Saying?
Yeah, I think he will be, yeah.
That's exactly the argument, that Musk himself would make, that they are going after him because, he wouldn't frame it as being an enemy of liberal Western democracy. He has increasingly framed himself as the potential savior of liberal Western democracy from a variety of threats. Obviously, yeah, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, no.
I know people in Europe don't agree with that, but this is something that certainly rouses his supporters. And I will say, again, I'm not a Musk fanboy. There's an American capitalist part of me that looks at this whole thing and just kind of goes, you know what, like, this is why Europe is falling behind. I don't want to punch down and I don't want to diminish what is happening because it's awful. It's not supportable and all that stuff. But unfortunately, this is kind of what happens as technology develops, right? The internet creates all sorts of wonderful things. It allows, a grandmother to instantly see a photo of her new grandchild, but it also allows drug dealers to connect. We wouldn't have this podcast, right? If it wasn't for the internet,
true, yeah.
And we wouldn't, have a relationship. You'd never know who I was. And the internet also does good things too.
I've written quite a lot.
You didn't catch my hacky stand-up switch there.
No.
I said the internet also does good things too.
All right. Yeah. So no. Yeah. Well, it does.
If any of my old stand-up buddies are listening, I'm going to get some text about how terrible that joke was, but I enjoyed it.
Okay.
This overreaction and this, whether or not progress in AI is a good thing, is probably maybe a separate episode. It's certainly a separate discussion. But from an American point of view, and from American capitalist finance point of view, this is such a European stereotype that they are moving forward. They are advancing technology. Something is going wrong that needs to get fixed. And there's not really an understanding. There's not a partnership aspect to it. It does seem like to a lot of Americans, I think in general, and really to his supporters, that this is just the heavy hand of an overregulated continental economy just coming once again for innovation.
I'm going to have to fundamentally agree and disagree on some of your points. So yes, Europe lags behind massively in tech stuff. It absolutely does. I think the only major pan-European success is probably Airbus. You know, parts made in Germany, France, England, the Netherlands, and, you know, they're all put together in Toulouse. And, you know, Airbus is the biggest airline in the world at the moment, I think, is it?
The biggest manufacturer of commercial airplanes. Yeah, they're ahead of Boeing now.
Yeah,
that's in part because Boeing has
stuff falling off the planes
10
while they're
years
flying.
shooting itself in the tail, so to speak.
I would agree with you that Europe lacks terribly when it comes to tech, apart from Ireland's own Stripe, of course. It doesn't do massive collaborations very well on a manufacturing or tech level or industrial level, apart from Airbus, as I just mentioned. But if Europe doesn't regulate big tech, who's going to regulate them? Nobody. There's nobody going to regulate them. You know, they have to be held to account at some level. And Elon Musk tweets very openly quite authoritarian viewpoints of the world. I'm trying not to get us sued here, Vince. He's sometimes engaged in some very anti-Semitic behavior, quite racist behavior, punching down on poor people. He has openly said that Ireland has been overrun with immigrants, which is not true, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
It has an immigration problem like everywhere else in Europe that we're probably, you know, taking in more than we're able to cater for. But we're not being overrun with immigrants. The infrastructure isn't there to help immigrants that are coming into the country, and that's the issue, I think. And it's putting services under strain. You know, he's interfered with the German elections, the French elections, Irish presidential elections, the UK elections, and the American elections. So you have a tech billionaire interfering in elections all over the world, and he's not being held to account. And my opinion there is he has to be held to account because he's essentially trying to end Western liberal democracies. He's trying to end the old world order that kept peace on the continent for 70 years, 80 years, and he's trying to end that right now.
I mean, what a great sentence. He's trying to end the old world order, because if Elon was on this podcast, he would say, yep, I am trying to end the old world order.
He would admit that.
Old world order has failed. We have the woke mind virus, to use his famous phrase he tweeted out a few years ago, and we have unchecked immigration. I don't know if listeners are familiar with Musk's Twitter timeline at the moment. If you're not, I know that Toll will back me in offering you our sincere congratulations for your life choices. It is manic if you look at it, just the rate of what he's posting, but he has gone full American online right. To your point, he is butting up against outright white nationalism, although he would say, I'm trying to tell people that they shouldn't hate being white, not that white people are better. He has criticized
Ryanair.
European leaders. Yeah, he got in a big brouhaha with the
Michael O'Leary
of Ireland's Ryanair. Yep.
Well, Michael O'Leary called him a wealthy idiot, a very wealthy idiot, and he knows nothing. Now, Michael O'Leary, anytime he does an interview, has something bad to say about somebody, so he's prone to hyperbole and marketing himself in the same way Elon Musk does. You know, these billionaires all share this self-marketing trait that they're very good at. I posted a video on the millions of views all over social media, and Elon Musk retaliated by saying he'd replace Michael O'Leary of Ryanair with somebody named Ryan.
Yeah, someone's actually.
He threatened to bite him essentially and just, you know, sack Michael O'Leary as CEO. And, you know, he'd probably overpay for Ryanair as well if he just for his vengeance. He likes to overpay to get his vengeance on people eventually, doesn't he?
Well, that's a little bit of what happened with Twitter for sure. What I thought was hysterical about the argument with O'Leary, which this exchange, if you're not familiar, did happen on Twitter, of course.
Yeah.
So, you know, these threats from Musk, and his supporters came out and all were very offended that O'Leary called Musk a wealthy idiot. But the hysterical thing about Twitter is that O'Leary also said that Twitter is a quote, a cesspit. And literally not a single user on Twitter is arguing with that. It is such a funny platform that you're on it, I'm on it. everyone on it knows it sucks. Everyone on it knows it's terrible. Would you ever, like, you have people that you love, you have family members and friends. Would you ever recommend, like, to your kid or to your friend that they try out Twitter?
No, I wouldn't.
No, God,
If I
no.
thought,
You'd be like,
no,
no, don't go on there. I'm on there all the time. It's just the worst people in the world.
it is the worst. It's turned into 4chan or 8chan or one of those old, very toxic message boards similar to Reddit, where the worst in humanity. It really is the worst in humanity. It's the most venomous place in the world. I've essentially basically stopped replying to people because there's no point.
It's toxic. The one thing people say, it has gotten more toxic, and I do think it has, but people also underestimate a little bit in the content moderation days when it was much more of a left-leaning platform. It was pretty toxic then too, and there were a lot of digital pile-ons. There's a little bit of an over-romanticization of what Twitter was in, let's say, 2019 or whatever, that it was.
No,
it was a cesspit then. It's just the cess. I don't even know if that's a word, but I think the cess is just a different color.
Well, you see, you get the problem there is that there's a great big empty space where content moderation should be. Okay. Now,
Right.
It was a cesspit back then, and you could be mean to somebody on the internet, but you couldn't slander them, defame them, undress them, threaten them. So there's a little bit of difference there. It's a place for the terminally venomous. It's a place for the obnoxious, the obscene. Sometimes I'm looking at it and my eyes are watering. I can't believe what I'm looking at.
Do the same thing. I'm like, I don't need this in my life, and then an hour later, I'm back on.
Yeah, there's no content moderation there whatsoever, none. And
right.
I think that's the main issue there. If you got on top of his content moderation in terms of people undressing people and child sexual abuse images, I think he might not be in so much trouble with the EU in particular. It is his own fault because he allowed it, he encouraged it. And I have a question for you. You said earlier that XAI is the most impressive thing Musk has ever done. Why do you say that?
Here's why I think XAI is so impressive. If you go to the before times, kind of pre-pandemic Elon, he was a pretty popular guy, certainly in the U.S. People didn't really detest him because if you're on the left, he was building electric cars, which are good for the environment. He was very vocally pro-environment. And if you were on the right, he was a capitalist. He had created jobs. He had created a new American powerhouse. People certainly criticize him. Anyone with $1 billion is going to get criticized, but people like him. And there was a time when people referred to him as Tony Stark.
Yeah,
if you're not familiar, right? The character from Iron Man who makes all these inventions. And it was a very odd metaphor that got used repeatedly because he hasn't invented anything. What he does is do things that other people have failed to do. Tesla electric cars are first tried out in the late 19th century. Starlink, Google and Meta and many others tried to do Starlink, couldn't make it work. His genius is just in inspiring people. And what he did with XAI, he started late against Google, against Facebook, against OpenAI, which had a multi-year head start and tens of billions of dollars in funding. He's in an environment where AI researchers at Google and Facebook are literally getting pay packages of like $100 million upfront if you've proven that you have AI stuff. Everyone knows this is where it's going. Everyone is just throwing a fire hose of money at generative AI. And he starts a company late to create a model. And I'm not expert enough to say which model is best. And even the experts are going to disagree. Grok has built an AI model that is competitive with the models from Google and Facebook and Microsoft.
I will say this, that the Irish government saw a meeting with X last week, and X's response was that X and Grok are two separate companies. And I thought they were splitting hairs there. I think they are the same company, it's...
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so that was their excuse they gave about Grok. Oh, you can't be calling X into meet with government politicians and stuff like that because actually Grok is a totally separate company. And I don't think it is. I think they're the Grok. So you've Grok and X are similar, like to Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in government. They're, there's no difference really, I think, is my thing. Like what was Musk's educational background?
Funny, he went to the University of Pennsylvania, which is the same university as Donald Trump, right? Immigrated from South Africa, came on a student visa. We were talking offline about even if you're a European, the most anti-Musk European out there, if you read about his childhood, you have to have a little bit of sympathy for him. His father was,
he's a bad egg. Man.
Yeah. Bad. I mean, yeah, straight out bad man, not a bad father, just kind of a bad man. But yeah, he went to Penn. He left. He co-founded a company during the dot-com bubble called Zip2 with his brother. They built basically city maps, which doesn't sound like much now. It was pretty revolutionary at the time. Yeah, they sold that for $300 million. He took that. He went into the company, the original X.com. He's now renamed Twitter X. We're still calling it Twitter. He founded X.com, was that 2000, I think it was.
That's a financial services company, was it?
Yeah, and he has this idea, which, he does not lack for ambition. He basically wants to create this financial services behemoth where you can send money, invest money all over the world. He literally wants to disintermediate the global banking system. I mean, that's his goal.
He still does.
Company.
He still does.
He still does. Yeah, and he has renamed Twitter X in part because he says that platform is supposed to be the base for stuff like that. He hasn't really gotten too much of that, but they merged with a company called PayPal. PayPal's now a huge business. I think that company's worth $50 billion or something like that, right?
Was it eBay owns that now?
PayPal built its early business on eBay. It was a great way for buyers and sellers to safely send money without sending checks or without actually linking their own accounts. So eBay, they did so on eBay. eBay acquired it, and then eBay helped grow it for, I think, a decade or so. And then eBay sent it off into an independent company, 2014, somewhere around there. So Musk got a huge payout from PayPal. Then he did SpaceX. He did not found Tesla. As we said before, he came in after it had started and wrote them a big check. He was the chair of the board. He said he kind of wanted to just work on SpaceX, and over time, over not a long time, he became more and more involved in Tesla, pushed the co-founders out. And that's actually oddly not an uncommon thing in Silicon Valley, where somebody who actually was not a founder gets sort of retconned into the founder title. So that's not unique to Musk. So he does Tesla, builds that up. They go public in 2010. And then since then, he's had Hyperloop, which is this transport concept. He did OpenAI. Which is
there anything happening with Hyperloop at the moment? That was meant to be,
I don't think so.
A tunnel between San Francisco and, is it Oakland or somewhere?
I don't even remember the details. It's supposed to be a super high-speed tunnel. Like, he's kind of used some of that with this boring company that he has, which is also, one of the weird things he does. He keeps promising this futuristic underground thing, and basically it's just putting Teslas in a tunnel and putting them on skates. There's a couple projects, and does Neuralink, which you mentioned, which provides brain implants. It's originally targeted towards people who have
a disability of some sort,
severe physical limitations or facing neurological disorders. And in AI, he had helped OpenAI, which is now a massive company. He's suing OpenAI because they told him they wanted to be nonprofit and then changed their mind. And there's some documents out there now that suggest they might have just told him they wanted to be nonprofit so they could get his money, with kind of the plan eventually to freeze him out and move to a for-profit model. And then in 2022, he acquires what is then known as Twitter. And I think that's kind of a good short version of his business history.
So he's the CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, X, Neuralink, the Boring Company, XAI. All those companies have been mirrored in controversy. Well, I don't know so much about the Boring Company, but the rest of them have been mirrored in a lot of controversies over there, aren't they? Securities law.
Always. He's been a magnet for controversy, yeah. And Tesla is a really great example of that, something that I know well because I've covered that company and that stock for a long time. Let's try and talk about that a little bit. Before we do that, I just want to say up front, and this is for ethical reasons and also for something that'll become clear towards the end of this conversation, that I don't have any personal direct stake in Tesla or against Tesla. We do own some index funds. Technically, we have indirect exposure, but I just want to say that up front, and we'll talk a little bit more in a bit about why I'm making sure I say that. beyond ethical reasons. So like we said, he doesn't found Tesla, but he jumps on pretty quick after, I think it's even less than a year after it starts. He leads $1 million investment. The canonical biography of him is by a guy named Walter Isaacson, who also wrote the very famous biography of Apple founder Steve Jobs. And in Isaacson's telling, basically Musk gives one suggestion, then gives two suggestions, and all of a sudden he's just kind of full on, hands on leading the company. And in 2010, they go public. And to put that into context, the last time an American automaker had gone public, which means that anyone can buy shares of stock, was 54 years earlier. It was
Really?
Ford Motor in 1956. And all along that period have been multiple failed automakers. There's Preston Tucker, Francis Ford Coppola made a movie about him. The DeLorean, if you ever saw Back to the Future.
There's an Irish connection there, yes. He was going to open his DeLorean factory in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I think the ones that they actually built, they wound up building a few hundred. I think they were outside Belfast, yeah.
Yeah, just outside Belfast, yeah.
Everyone who tries to make a new automotive brand in this country just fails.
Yeah, that raised $226 million in its IPO, the internet tells me. It's
okay, yeah.
He has taken it from those very early, humble beginnings to record share pricings. And now his car sales are tanking all over Europe, which was his main market and continues to be his biggest market for a long time. And because of his political leanings and his very weird mutterings on social media, he's tanked his car sales.
He has hurt his sales. I don't think there's any question about that.
He has. They're down massively.
As with everything here, what's your perspective on that? Is that stupid for his shareholders, or is that, as his supporters would tell you, his political and maybe even his financial supporters would tell you, it just shows he's a man of principle, right? He's not going to keep his opinions to himself to sell more cars.
Well, I don't know about his principles, to be perfectly honest. If he was so principled about free speech that he's been talking about on X the last couple of weeks in light of the Grok controversies, he's backed down. He's backed down over Grok in the face of EU investigations. If you're a paid subscriber or you are a subscriber to XAI or Grok XAI, you can only undress women there if you're a paid subscriber, and then he's...
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
And it's evolved into nobody can do it anymore. So
right. Which is, I think, very telling about, and this is not something relegated to Musk, but we've talked before about Trump's core belief that you never apologize. Most companies, even tech companies, even American tech companies in Grok's position was said, you know what, we're sorry this happened, we're going to fix it. That doesn't even cross Elon's mind. He comes out full blaze. Oh, they're only doing this because I'm pro free speech. And then he lets his company very quietly a few days ago put out a statement. Oh yeah, okay, you can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But at no point is anyone from the company, let alone Musk himself, going to apologize. But
no, he's not going to apologize. And the only thing and back again to what I said earlier, if the EU doesn't hold him to account, probably his second biggest market outside the United States for X, then nobody's going to hold him to account. Amy, Malaysia and Indonesia banning X, so what? It's not even a massive market over there. Russia's banned X, X is banned in China. So his only markets are the Western Hemisphere and Western Europe.
I mean, what's funny to me is, like, to an American, the idea, like you say, he has to be held to account, and to an American, like, that's honestly kind of a foreign concept.
Yes, we believe in holding our entrepreneurs to account when they overstep the line, and he's overstepped the line this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly within the very narrow confines of what we're talking about, he needs to be held to account. But the broader idea that...
So it's no different to when the United States held the railroad barons to account in the late 19th century, is it? They eventually broke them all up. There are the Rockefellers. Was it the Rockefellers broken up massively?
Yeah, we had an antitrust act that broke up things like Standard Oil. Standard Oil, that was it. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So this is how this plays out here. They eventually get too big, overstep the line, and either pull the party line or they get broken up. And that's I think this is what's happening here. Is the EU is trying to do to the tech barons what happened to the railroad barons in the late 19th century in the United States. When they started over the step of the line, they were broken up and they were held to account. And
That's fair.
this is a very similar thing that's going on here at the moment.
We have had that in the EU and even in America. They're less aggressive in America, but antitrust investigations into Google, the most famous one, basically, should you be able to own all these different aspects of the internet essentially and have dominant market share and all that stuff, that there's a problem with that. I get your point sort of emotionally, but I think the American perspective is rephrase that. From
because he's American,
the government is not supposed to be holding Elon Musk to account because he's not breaking law. He's not breaking laws.
He's not breaking laws in the United States, but he's definitely breaking laws in Europe.
Obviously, in this instance, he is. But Tesla is not out there breaking laws.
Well, Tesla's not, but X is certainly breaking laws.
In terms of speech restrictions and moderation and things.
Well,
like that.
the nudity, undressing women,
right.
Child sex abuse images. He's allowing that to happen as well. Obviously, he's allowing that to happen because everything in X is within his orbit. Okay, so he's either guttering moderation teams or he's promoting people, firing people. Nothing happens on X without his say so. Nothing. He's an absolute ruler there.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. Again, I'm talking kind of more beyond this narrow issue where you had kind of framed it earlier that because of his power, because he is, as you said, he's interfering with elections, he's doing this, he's doing that. To an American, that's just sort of the price you pay for having a billionaire. The answer is that if people are really that turned off, then they just need to leave Twitter. It's a private platform. It should run under its own rules, obviously within the context of not having these awful images and within the context of it, the local laws about hate speech, although I think a lot of Musk supporters at this point would disagree with that. We're just less comfortable with the idea that the government should circumscribe his power just because he has a lot of power. We're okay letting people build up power for better or for worse.
Okay, up to a point. Now, if there was a different American president in charge, say somebody else, Kamala Harris or someone, take your pick of useless Democrats, I don't think his power would be left unchecked. I think the fact of the matter is that he's close to Trump. He was his besties for a while. Trump's not going to touch him because he's promoting a lot of Trump ideologies. He promised as well, I remember this, that he promised to make X the most accurate source of information around the world. And it's absolutely turning to the complete opposite of the most accurate source of information in the world. You have to fact check everything you read on it.
That was true before. And I think most supporters would tell you that what Twitter did, this is obviously a huge issue. The pandemic obviously just hypercharged all this. And the people who support Musk would say that during the pandemic, Twitter itself did censor information that in retrospect probably turned out to be somewhat correct, or at least was reasonably researched and at least should have been part of the debate. And the two things there are kind of about, the utility of masks and the whole lab leak debate, which for some reason has just always been a cause celeb on the right for reasons I don't entirely understand. When I was hunkered in my house with a bottle of Lysol, I didn't really give a whether it came from a monkey or a lab in Wuhan. But in any case, and emotionally, I kind of agree with you. I think it's worse. It's still a private business.
It is a private business, and if he continues to allow very weird stuff to happen on his platform, he's going to find that he'll be shut out. He'll be shut out of the European market. Well, there's a lot of kind of big, what they call 4D chess going on here at the moment. If Trump moves unilaterally to take over Greenland, I think Twitter is finished in Europe. We've something called the Anti-Coercion Act here in Europe. And that allows us to target all foreign companies. And I think Twitter will be shut down. And it'll be shut down for 3 reasons, okay? He's always trying to fight EU laws designed to protect its citizens. And that's our right to protect our citizens, not American citizens.
I'll back you completely on that.
So that's our business, okay? In the same way, America's absolutely the right to protect its own citizens also, okay?
Yep.
2, he amplifies far-right extremists who want to break up the European Union, right? So that's 2 reasons why I think the EU will shut X down if Trump goes after Greenland.
Okay.
And 3, he lets Russian and fascist and MAGA propaganda flow unchecked, and the platform's awash with so much misinformation, conspiracy theories.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
And I think the EU are looking for an excuse to shut X down. And if Trump moves for Greenland, I think the EU will use the anti-coercion measurement. And the anti-coercion measurement is essentially saying that if you come after one of us, you come after all of us.
Right.
And we're going to target you and your company, your country and its goods. And that includes online platforms, Meta, X, TikTok's is owned by the Chinese army, as everybody knows. So Meta and X will be in serious trouble.
How about that? Yeah.
So there's a lot going on at play here at the moment. It's not just a case of Trump going after Greenland. The EU will shut American tech companies out of the EU, and that will hit their pocket. That will hit their bottom line straight away. And, needless to say, the global economy would tank then, of course.
That is the one ace in the hole, I think, for the EU. I mean, as a lot of people have said, if we decide that we're going to take it militarily, which God forbid we will not get anywhere close to that, I think it's going to be difficult for anybody to stop us. But there are more ways, and I think some Trump supporters realize that the EU can do real damage to the American economy. We are not quite the independent behemoth that we would like to think that we are. So I sympathize with all that. One thing that drives me nuts about American Musk supporters complaining about free speech is, to your point, I think is absolutely right. The EU absolutely has a right to set those boundaries in the way it does. And we, including J.D. Vance, as you pointed out before, keep acting as if America is supposed to tell Europe what the rules are supposed to be, while also, having this belief that no one should tell us what our rules are supposed to be, which drives me a little nuts, that hypocrisy. But I do want to push back on one thing he said. I don't think there's an electable American president who would do anything to Elon Musk. I think our beliefs on free speech and our beliefs on private property and stuff are so deeply ingrained that I don't see any viable path towards the U.S. federal government doing something material. Maybe fines here and there, maybe whatever it is, but actually breaking him up, saying he needs to actually change his ownership structure or his ownership or whatever. I can't imagine that happening.
No, the EU can't force people to change their ownership structure, but they can severely curtail what you do in the EU.
Right.
Okay. So they can't say, "Oh, will you remove Musk and we let you back in?" They wouldn't do that. They'll just say we're restricting X or we're restricting Grok. The EU has a lot more in its arsenal than people give it credit for, and being one of the largest global blocs in the world, I think Trump would be and Elon Musk would be foolish to underestimate it. Now, back to an issue there. The free speech is such a foundational story for the United States of America. Yeah, you're right there. It'll never be touched. You can't, restrict what people say. It's so ingrained in your society. It's taken as a God-given liberty.
Yeah.
So I don't see anybody ever going after Musk in that sense. So I do agree with you. But has he not clashed with the SEC?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the SEC is the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission.
So, it's not just the EU regulators he's clashed with, but he's clashed with American regulators also, hasn't he?
For sure. Yeah, that's actually kind of an interesting bit of history in the context of this, and in the context of maybe American attitudes toward these kind of guys. And we said before, he takes Tesla public in 2010, and it's worth noting, if you had bet on Elon, you would have done really, really well. I think as of Thursday, if you had bought shares in the IPO, you would be up 39,000%. So just put that into context. If you put 10 grand into the IPO, it would be worth about $3.9 million right now.
Oh, cool.
And there are many more people than you would think who have become maybe not quite millionaires, but have created six figures off betting on Elon. You can see them on social media. There's a few Twitter accounts of people who have just bet on Elon since the jump and, made millions of dollars.
He's done well,
yeah. I mean, he has done well, but we talked about how controversial he is, and he's controversial in the finance community from the jump. When they go public, there are a lot of traders putting on what's called a short sale of Tesla, which is basically you borrow the stock and you sell it. So you're betting that the stock is going to go down. And there's two reasons for this. One is the history that we talked about, which is that if someone says, hey, would you like to bet that this new American car company is going to fail? Your history says, yes, I would like to bet on that. I will take that bet because I've seen Back to the Future and everything else. And, but the other thing is that there is a sense that grows in their first few years that Elon just doesn't follow the rules. And so the Securities and Exchange Commission, they have rules about company communications and about CEO communications. And Musk regularly flouts them.
Yeah, that's about manipulating the stock market. That's why they have the rules, isn't it?
Yeah, it's to avoid manipulation. The other aspect of it, too, is to give investors a level playing field. So information from the company that is material, that matters, that might actually move the stock price is supposed to be delivered in an organized way through EDGAR, which is a filing system that the SEC has, so that all investors are getting the information at the same time. We don't want CEOs just randomly spouting off because that just creates chaos. Chaos that is unfair to individual investors, and the SEC historically has tried to favor individual investors. And so we talked in a previous episode, I think that highlights and lowlights episode, his famous tweet in early 2016. He says that in 2 years, you'll be able to press a button and your Tesla will drive itself from Los Angeles to New York. Now, that was 10 years ago. They're nowhere close. And that to a lot of his detractors at the time is just garden variety securities fraud.
Yeah. He's trying to push up the share price. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can go to a website, elonmusk.today, and see a whole list of all these promises that he's made about what Tesla's going to do that haven't come true. And in many cases, had very, very little chance of coming through. And by 2015, 2016, the short trade in Tesla is the biggest in the market by dollars. By far, it's the biggest in history. And there are even some people who believe that he's actually running an accounting fraud. I'm going to point out that I never believe that, but there are allegations that he's cooking the books. There are people who believe that they're going to go bankrupt at any minute. And in 2018, and it's pretty vitriolic online. Musk sees this stuff on Twitter. Then he starts going on Twitter when the stock goes up, and he's tweaking the shorts. He
bought shorts.
Yeah, he wants to send a box of shorts to someone who short the stock. And the Tesla makes a flamethrower. If you think I'm joking, they make a working flamethrower because he tweets that he's going to burn the shorts. And all of a sudden, like 3 weeks later, they're selling flamethrowers for $400. And in classic Musk fashion, they have to then walk it back because you're not allowed in the United States to ship a flamethrower across state lines.
I'd like a flamethrower. I'd like that. I'd like one. Can you bring one back? Can you bring one over from America, over to the States? I can stand in the front lawn and just press my flamethrower at anybody who walks by that I don't like.
In Florida, probably. That probably qualifies, stand your ground law. Florida and Texas, yeah. You're on my sidewalk. Here's my flamethrower.
Here's my flamethrower, yeah. Good grief.
To the people who are bearish on him, in many cases are legitimately indignant that he just flouts the rules like this and the SEC doesn't do anything about it. And I mean, a lot of this stuff is pretty open and shut that, again, that promise, first of all, he's not supposed to just be saying that on Twitter. It's supposed to be done in an organized, regulated way. And it's just a promise that at the time it's ludicrous. That's not, oh, he was overly optimistic. Again, it's 10 years. We're probably at least 10 years from a car being able to drive itself across the country. So people are legitimately offended by that. And this kind of comes to a head in 2018. He goes on Twitter, of course, and he tweets that, quote, I am considering taking Tesla private at $420. In other words, $420 per share. And infamously, he says, funding secured. And this is all kinds of wrong.
That's what got him in trouble. Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, what was the 420 reference to again? That's a very famous American cultural reference, isn't it?
It's a marijuana reference. I don't know, and I don't know if anyone knows where it came from. It's a marijuana reference that's so old that it was a marijuana reference when I was the age that my friends are smoking marijuana. Not that I would never have.
I had never heard that cultural reference until that time when Musk tweeted it.
No, It's not
I
global. That's too funny.
never heard
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah, it's 30, 40 years old in America, at least. I don't know. Some idiot stoner in Colorado, got off work at 4:00 and it was 15 minutes for him to get home in 1966. And like 20 years later, the entire country says 4:20 is when it's time to partake in marijuana.
Okay, right.
And he always does that. He does these goofy jokes, 4:20 and 69. And very famously, the Tesla, the Model S and the Model X and the Model Y. And
That's right.
he wanted the Model E, so it would spell out sexy. But in any case, this tweet about the buyout offer is wrong in multiple ways. You are not supposed to be tweeting about a buyout offer. That is definitely a hugely important thing that everyone needs to know about at the same time. You don't put that out on Twitter. It's also the SEC would later allege.
Let me argue back there that he was letting everybody know at the same time by putting it out on Twitter.
Well, one of the things is it's kind of unfair because it means the investors have to follow him. They're supposed to be following the right, these kind of authorized channel. The SEC later alleges in a settlement, Musk agrees to the settlement. Let's emphasize that in the settlement, he does not admit to or deny breaking any laws, that the funding actually wasn't secured. He'd had a vague conversation with the Saudis about buying the company, and in part because he's tired of short sellers criticizing him. This is legitimately part of why he wants to go private. He also tells people that when they're going private, he tells them that they can keep their shares, which is outright false. I'll actually defend him and say I think he didn't understand that was false, but he pays $20 million. Tesla pays $20 million. And there's one more aspect we'll get to in a minute. And immediately Musk is just indignant. He goes on a news show here and he tells the interviewer that he does not respect the SEC.
That's right.
Yeah. His sense of humor is not great. Again, it's a lot of 4:20 and 69, but the one that is funny in 2020, he tweets SEC 3-letter acronym, middle word is, quote, Elon's.
Yeah, well, we let listeners follow that brain teaser on their own because this is a show for young adults as well.
That's
we
right.
We don't want to have to slap an over 18 rating on this.
So again, he's still using Twitter to taunt the shorts, and he gets madder and madder. And I think this is really an interesting microcosm for both kind of the disagreement that you're having, but also what Elon's expectations are. I mean, Americans in general are kind of happy to let guys like this, have the rules not apply to them. Like I said, there are people in finance who are offended that he can do this. Most people don't care. Most people in the market with real money don't care. Most people in tech don't care.
Once he's making money for them.
There is kind of an acceptance that this guy is just a legitimate genius. Again, I think that's true. I mean, it's love him or hate his politics or whatever. His ability to organize people, I think, is pretty much unprecedented. And it's telling about how widespread the belief is that he doesn't tell the truth is, because when he tweets this, Tesla stock goes up towards the acquisition price. It goes right back down like in an hour. Once everybody thinks through it, they're like, this is just Elon spewing on Twitter again. Yeah, this is not going to happen, which really is literally the entire financial market knows Elon just says stuff, and that's kind of supposed to be okay. Like I said, there's one more aspect of the settlement that we haven't gotten to, which is very funny in the context of our current discussion, which is that Musk agrees to have a representative from Tesla review all his tweets.
Yes. Do we know who that person was? No.
We don't. The person is known in the financial media as, quote, the Twitter sitter. There's always speculation about who it is. He said the next year, he was asked in an interview, are you somebody reviewing your tweets? He was like, God, no, nobody does that. And then he promptly got in trouble for tweeting that they were going to make 500,000 cars in 2019, when literally the company itself 2 weeks earlier had said the number was almost certainly much lower. There doesn't seem to be much evidence looking at his timeline that someone is reviewing those tweets. Musk and Tesla sued to get that restriction removed and went to the Supreme Court, and he actually lost at the Supreme Court. So sometimes the rules do apply.
Not that he likes them or anything. How does he eventually end up purchasing Twitter that would become X?
Yeah, that's another fascinating one. It's very clearly an impulsive thing. If you read that Isaacson biography, Musk himself kind of hints at that. His supporters go, he bought Twitter to save the world and protect free speech. let's not forget that after he agrees to buy Twitter, he goes back on his word almost instantly.
Yeah.
And he famously tweets, one of my favorite tweets, it's just one of my favorite tweets. Like a month after he agrees to buy Twitter, he sends out a tweet in the middle of the night. He goes, the acquisition is on hold. And everybody's like, what do you mean it's on hold? Like that's
because of bots, if I remember correctly.
That's the excuse he eventually comes up with, is that there were more bots than he thought there were. But regardless, like that's not like, you don't go home to your wife and be like, hey, honey, our marriage is on hold.
No.
I got to go think, for a couple of weeks. He signed a binding contract. He was going to have to pay $44 billion. He tries to get out of it by doing the bots. He can't do it. I think he did believe in the free speech. I think he also, at the risk of psychoanalyzing, he had a little bit of a manic episode. And you get that sense in the Isaacson biography, and you can actually see some of the emails that go back and forth. He decides to start buying the stock a couple of weeks before the acquisition is announced. Breaks another rule, by the way, doesn't disclose his purchases. This is just black and white. He fights back on this too. When you buy stock over 5%, you're supposed to disclose it within 10 days. He waits 21 days.
Pay another fine on that?
No, that case is actually still open, evidently.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. I'm guessing the Trump SEC doesn't have that one on the front burner.
No, they definitely don't. No.
So, yeah, once again, breaking the rules. But, in this case, kind of funnily enough, the rules do apply. He signed a contract. He tries desperately to get out of it. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty skeptical that his bot complaint was authentic, given that he was saying before he bought it that he was mad that there were too many bots.
Well, he said he promised to clean up X.
Yeah.
When he purchased it and to get rid of all the bots. Now,
right.
There's a couple of scientific studies have been done that shown he actually has tried to get rid of the bots, but under his stewardship, they've actually gone up to about 65%.
Yeah, so, I'm sure they've gotten worse.
That's a University of Sydney study. I'm sure if you Google it or AI it, it'll come up on something. But it was a University of Sydney study that showed that bots actually increased under his stewardship of X.
Of course they did. I mean, he has publicly said, and it seems to be true, that he slashed 80% of the workforce.
Yeah, the content moderation team. Exactly.
You still see people on Twitter going, oh, look what he showed. They cut all 80% of the people. What were they doing? Well, a lot of them were doing content moderation and bot fighting.
That's exactly what they were doing.
The infrastructure still works, but it's an open source infrastructure. It's not like it's really technically that hard to keep the platform running. What labor is required is for all these edge cases and to do all these things. And that's what he cut. And yeah, it's not a surprise at all.
He comes across as somebody as a lot of personality disorders, which I'm not going to name because I don't want to get sued. And I wonder about his long-term business strategies, especially in regards to X. So he bought Tesla, built a real solid, real product, brilliant company. And when you talked about lies there earlier, he was during the summer, June or July, this famous A15 Tesla chip that he was talking about building. He said they'd finished the design of it, and last week, or he said again, we've just finished the design of it. So we're just going back to what you're saying about him lying. So he built Tesla. He's built a brilliant product, world famous. He's made electric cars cool that nobody else was able to make cool in the previous 100 years. Yeah. He gets addicted to Twitter. Is that fair?
Again, we are not recommending to our viewers that they fact check us on this. He's acting the last couple of weeks, months especially. He's acting like you're just your standard Twitter addict. He's on it all the time. He's going to do something and then going back to check. And I tweeted this myself. Within like a span of a week, he tweeted, fraud in the U.S. is got to be, it's 20% of the budget's 1.5 trillion. And then at 6 or 7 days later, fraud in the U.S. is $700 billion. It's 10% of the budget. And I was like, that's the stuff you do when you are tweeting so much and thinking so much about Twitter that it's just going in, you're just forgetting about it.
He plays
just
fast.
Fire hose.
Yeah, he plays fast and loose with the facts. I mean, he got Trump elected.
I think he gave more money to that election than anyone's given to an election in history, other than, maybe.
How much money was it?
I think he pledged $250 million or something like that, didn't he?
Right. How much did he give that amount? Only in America would have trying to get elected president cost you $1 billion.
Well, he spent over $270 million. Yeah.
To get a man elected, to get Trump elected, he spent $270 million to get a fascist elected. Good. So he got Trump elected in 2024. Now, Trump has alienated Canada, Europe, and every other Western democracy around.
Venezuela a little bit, I think.
Yeah, as a direct consequence of that, Tesla's sales are down massively.
Right.
All over Europe. In Canada, has turned to China for its electric cars instead of Tesla. And he's, watching this brilliant brand that he's built up evaporate, all because he's addicted to Twitter, I think.
He's addicted to Twitter, but he has very publicly had this massive political shift, and there's all sorts of speculation. Like, one of his children came out as transgender and then cut off contact with Elon, and there's always been speculation that that's what kind of catalyzed his big move, right? And the woke
pushed him over the edge
and all that stuff. Yeah. I think, ironically, it's very clear that Twitter itself has radicalized him. The thing that people talk about Twitter doing very clearly is done to him, that he just started reading a little bit of right-wing stuff, and then the algorithm got more and more right-wing. And the funny thing about him, which again is like Trump, that he seems to fully believe that what's on X is true. Like, he just reposts and retweets this shit without any context. That's what got him in trouble. He wound up going to Auschwitz in 2023 or 2024 because he was reposting these great replacement theory tweets from an account that was just straight up not debatable, like actual Nazi. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think that there is something authentic to it. And again, his supporters would say, the fact that he's willing to tank Tesla's brand, it's just proof that he's committed to the cause.
Yeah, committed to what caused the ketamine.
Wow, yeah, man.
Recently, he said, again, back to his wild pronouncements, that there's no point in going to medical school because, the robots and AI are going to be diagnosing people from here on in.
He also said you don't have to save for retirement anymore.
Did he? Why is that?
Yeah. In the last couple of weeks.
All right.
AI is going to unleash a world of abundance.
Right. Okay.
Which is very funny. It's hysterical that he said that during the entire 2024 election, he was complaining about the national debt.
Exactly.
Like, you got to pick one, buddy. If you don't need to save for retirement, then the government should be spending whatever the hell it wants because, it's just money. It's future money. It doesn't even count.
What I'm going to do first thing tomorrow morning when I wake up, is I'm going to liquidate my pension fund and get off my face of ketamine. And what we'll do is we'll record a live episode where the two of us have liquidated our pension funds and get off our face of ketamine because Elon Musk told us to do.
Yeah, we'll open the episode.
We'll pencil it in for St. Patrick's Day. Instead of going on the booze, we'll go on the ketamine.
That's right. And we will spend the first half hour of the episode reading Elon's timeline, see if it's any more fun on drugs. He is just such a fascinating guy, and that's the contradiction in terms of him between real genius in the business and like, it's funny that O'Leary called him a wealthy idiot on Twitter. You know what? Like, he's a idiot. Like, I don't think you can disagree with that. You can, even if you agree with his politics.
Reckless.
But like,
reckless and racist, some would say.
Yeah. Is he the most powerful non-governmental person in modern history? I actually asked this on Twitter. I was curious if anyone could come up with it.
I think overtly he would like to think he is. I think actually in the background Zuckerberg is probably a little bit more powerful.
Really? You pick Zuckerberg?
Yeah, I would. Zuckerberg doesn't like the negative publicity and bad attention.
Right.
I think Musk doesn't care.
That's fair.
I think Musk doesn't care. I think Zuckerberg likes to pretend that he's best friends. And like, Zuckerberg will go out of his way to shut down your account if you're doing something illegal or you're saying something that he doesn't agree with. If Facebook is not a free speech absolutist platform, whereas I think X is to a certain extent, and Facebook is a little bit more manipulative in a kind of underhand way. Yeah,
their reach is also massively broader.
Yeah,
I mean, every adult in the world is on Facebook, basically, outside of China.
Yeah, so I think Zuckerberg's reach is actually greater than Musk's in terms of his access to Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook.
That's interesting.
I think it's far more powerful than Zuckerberg lets on, I think. And whereas Musk is talking about, X is the digital agora, it's the marketplace of ideas, it's the town hall, it's the town village, it's the,
It's
everybody's
become the
equal.
everything app. Yep.
Yeah, everything's equal. Everybody's equal. There's no, but if you have 1 million followers, you have 10 followers. It doesn't matter. You're all equal here. Whereas Facebook does it far more subtly, I think. And Musk, I suppose, he's the fall guy for all social media's failings at the moment. Everything that goes wrong, he's taking the blame for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to your point, the reason he's taking the blame for it is that Mark Zuckerberg has been, I think, a little quieter and a little savvier about how he's chosen to wield his power.
You need to be more subtle about these things. And Musk could be the first trillionaire if his mouth didn't get in the way of, saying the first thing that comes to his mind.
Yeah.
So
this has always been the argument in finance, is that that's just a package. Like the idea that you can get Musk genius without his drawbacks, it's not realistic. This is what you get. And most people who have bet on him kind of keep betting on him because he kind of keeps delivering on what they want. And I think that's
there's an element of him being the mad genius, isn't there?
Oh, yeah.
You don't get the genius without the madness going, and vice versa.
Yeah.
To be a brilliant, eccentric billionaire, you have to have that madness. You have to have that little bit of, craziness.
Yeah.
That's got you there in the first place. Sometimes that craziness can be a source of for, spurring you on to do great things. He has done great things when it comes to Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink. He's had some successes there. It'll be huge if that's a massive success for humanity. But again, the madness, and look, I'm calling it madness. People have called it racism, anti-Semitism, pick all your bad isms. And he's been guilty of all of them, or all of them at some stage. So he gets himself in so much trouble that it's hard to feel any sympathy for him.
I think that's true too. Yeah. Except when you read about his dad.
Except when you read about his dad. I mean, when your father marries your stepsister, I mean, there's something really weird going on there. Yeah. That's enough to, that would mess with Freud's head, I think.
Yeah. Maybe explains why, Musk's ultimate motivation is to put people on Mars. And we've all known people whose motivation is clearly to kind of get as far away from their parents in multiple ways as possible. And it's kind of hard to imagine a more fitting, more extreme version of that archetype.
Yeah, blasting yourself off the planet. Yeah, blasting yourself off the planet to get away from your parents is the ultimate, that's the ultimate you, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's a dark way.
Yes. I'm not famous for my sweetness in life, and surely you know that already. I have a very dark and almost nihilistic outlook on the world. It's very hard to perk myself up talking about Elon Musk when he's trying to destroy the very Western liberal democracies that I want to see survive. I'm definitely in the anti-Musk camp because he enables Donald Trump and he's actively looking to overthrow Western liberal democracies. That's the things I hold dear. And when you're trying to end the world order as we know it, that's brought peace in Europe for the last 80 years, I think he's in the bad guy camp. He's there with Trump and the Putins and all the bad people in the world at the moment.
Yeah, that's such a fascinating way to put it. It's really stunning, the nationalities of a lot of the people in the bad guy camp in Europe right now, isn't it?
Yeah,
not what we would have expected 10 years ago. But I do think people on the right and people that Musk has come to amplify and support believe that there's an existential battle for the soul of the West. And I think that many of them underestimate the fact that people in Europe, like yourself, are starting to have that same realization and that same belief as well.
Well, politics is so fast moving now. We'll have our current affairs podcast out on Friday. Who knows what's going to happen? It's we don't know where we'll be in 5 days' time. This is the mess that the global geopolitical order is in at the moment. And again, I think it's fueled by social media. It's fueled by disinformation. It's fueled by people see online or what Trump watches on TV. And I think the end of the world order as we know it was sped up by the likes of X as a platform and Musk as its custodian.
I will say at the very least, that's certainly reasonable and take supported by a lot of what has happened over the last couple of years.
I blame social media for everything. You know that.
I know.
So,
and by the way, so if you want to check us out on Twitter, it's AC_pod. And we're going to launch a new Substack that's got show notes and some kind of added context and sources. We're going to start putting those up this week.
Yes, follow us, and we're going to start having guests soon.
That's true.
We're going to find all the controversial people in the world. We'll get Putin on, Xi Jinping, we might get Viktor Orban, a couple of other mad people on, to get those numbers up.
Yeah, so, that's a great idea.
Okay, so I'm Tull from the Irish Politics Newsletter, and
I'm Vince Martin. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.